Oh, level up. 1, 2, 3. Hello everyone, TheSkilledRoy here, back with another Legends of Runeterra video. And today we are reacting to Jhin, the newest champion coming out to Legends of Runeterra. Unfortunately, I had to watch the VOD for this because I was at work at the time of the reveal. Tragically, middle of the day reveal, unfortunate for me. But overall though, I'm really excited to see what Jhin has to offer, and I think he's going to be super cool as he's bringing the new Runeterra type of champion to the game as well. But before we get into it, just a quick word from our sponsors today. This video is brought to you by Mastering Runeterra, the one-stop shop for everything you need to get better at LOR. They've got deck guides on all the top decks, plenty of articles from top-level players, and even a matchup table that lets you know what you should be playing in the current meta. If you check them out using my link, you'll be not only getting access to some of the best resources out there, but you'll also be going a long way to supporting my channel as well. Use the code TSR at checkout to get 10% off any subscription. Thanks again to Mastering Runeterra for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. Alright, we're back and here we go. Jhin takes the stage. Oh, interesting, showing. Oh man, they're showing Path of Champions. Okay. Alright, so pausing here real quick. So Jhin is a 4-mana 4/4, of course. What else was he gonna be, right? Come on. And he has Origin the Virtuoso, attack, deal 2 to all stunned enemies. Interesting. Level up, you've played 12 plus fast spells, slow spells, or skills. Interesting. This is actually very close to that Burning House countdown timing around that time period of like 12-ish. So that's actually kind of interesting. So by the time you level up Jhin, the Burning House will have also been almost ready as well. The Virtuoso, if Jhin started in your deck, for every 3 fast spells, slow spells, or skills you play while you behold Jhin, play Lotus Trap. Okay, they don't show us what that is yet, but you may put any follower that has a skill into your deck during deck building. Interesting. So this is actually kind of similar to a start of game effect that gives you bonuses based on how you've built your deck. This is actually very similar to the KDA event they had a long time ago, back where depending on how you built your deck, you would get different bonuses based on how it started out. And I'm noticing that this is actually very similar to that. Very interesting indeed. We'll have to take a look at this and see where it goes, but I'm curious as to what a Lotus Trap is, because he doesn't need to be on the board, you just need to be beholding him. Let's keep watching. Okay. Oh, this theme is so good. Stagehand, 4 mana. Wait, hang on. Sorry, guys. We'll go back a half second there. 2 mana 4/4, play stun an enemy, and it's ephemeral itself. Interesting. That's an interesting way to make ephemerals higher and powerful. Lowest Trap, deal 1 to enemy nexus. If Jhin is in play, it deals 1 to the weakest instead, I think it said. Yeah, wait. I need to go back there. Okay, so right here it says deal 1 to the enemy nexus. If Jhin is in play, stun the weakest enemy. So normally, if he's in your hand, you'll always get the deal 1 damage, but if Jin's in play, then you get to stun the weakest enemy. That's really good for tempo, man. That can get really scary really quickly. Very interesting. Okay. Cool, so there's the 1 damage to the next. Oh wow, nice animation. And the W animation, that's so cool. Wow. Holy, are you guys seeing this? Deadly Flourish, deal 2 to all stunned enemies. That's a hit. Oh, it's his ult, of course. Let's fucking go, dude. Damn. Okay. Star Power. So this is a special ability for like every Path of Champions character has their own special abilities. So this is his apparently. Dancing Grenade, deal 1 to a unit. Create a second bounce in hand at the next round start. Create a Jhin in your deck. Okay, so this is his champion spell. So it's a 4-mana deal 1, so not really good, but I imagine that second bounce might scale up here.
A splash of crimson to elevate the scene.
Cool. And of course, it counts as probably 2 spells as well, which is really good. Nice, does the 1 damage.
The audience loves you.
0 mana, deal 4? Okay. So that's 5 mana, do 5 damage across 2 different spells. That's pretty good. The Maker, recall a unit with less power than me. Interesting, for the hand buff archetype. Okay. So you keep recalling all their units, right? And it keeps giving you more ammunition for yourself there. Nice. He has the stun as well. Wow, you can just lock down their board. Look at this.
Through my work, you shall transcend.
Wow. Cast Cannon Barrage equal to my cost? That's an amazing treasure. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is a new card art. Alright, let's see this. Wow, it just triggers off every single one. Oh, level up! 1, 2, 3. Oh, he shoots the player. That's so good. Wait, hang on. I gotta go back. For that one. Let's see here.
I hear it now. The thunderous applause.
Oh, the bullet catch. Oh, so sick. Oh, the shake of the tree. Oh my god, that is like... That's so fucking good, dude. Okay, hang on. So wait, what does level up even do? I didn't even pay attention. Holy shit. So this thing got quick attack. He still does the stun. Okay. Damn. Another stun attack here. Cool. Man, is he just be like Yasuo? Like, this is like seemingly similar, very similar to Yasuo. Oh, it deals 4 instead. Oh, it does 4 to the Nexus too? Jesus. I mean, of course it does 4. Of course it does. God damn. All right, let's hop into the new cards. First up, we have Harrowing Return. Revive an ephemeral copy of the strongest dead allied follower and give enemies -1 attack this round for 4 mana slow, of course. Now, man, I was so excited for this card. I thought until I saw the word follower, I'm like, man, you can do some cool stuff with this in the new Nocturne change. But unfortunately, it's good, it's decent, but it's just... I don't know. It feels kind of like a weird fusion of like Harrowing plus Cataclysm in a way, where you're going to bring back 1 unit for a single attack and then it's going to die right after. I wonder if there's any really good ways to cheese this. While this card is typically what you would see in a lot of card games as a way to sort of like cheat out cards from your graveyard, you would like discard a card to your grave and then play this card to bring it out to attack. You can't really do that in LOR, not easily. So I'm wondering if there's an easy way to start killing strong units well ahead of time to get this to summon and come out later. Overall, it's not a bad card by any means. I'm just not sure if it's good enough where it's currently standing at. Next up is Hunting Boar, the 3 mana 2/1 with can't block and last breath get an empty mana gem. So this is interesting. So obviously the immediate comparison people are going to have for this card are cards such as the Avarosan Sentry, which is a long since very well established card in many Freljord decks. And this one is just, I'm not sure. I just don't see the value in it. It being unable to block is a pretty huge detriment, and it also being 1 mana more than Sentry. Like, sure, getting a mana gem is nice, but like Sentry's value will be generated long across the game, right? If you play Sentry on like turn 8, you're still gonna get a card, and that's always gonna feel good. Whereas like getting a mana gem on turn 8-9 often just doesn't matter. And it's an empty mana gem too, so it's not like you can even use the mana that this initially happens on. Man, I don't know about this one, Hunting Boar. I would really have to see like what their intention was for this card, because the opponent can just not block it and just take 2 damage. They don't really care. So I guess your goal here is to play this card with things like Blighted Ravine, like cards that are going to hit the entire board. But at that point, it's just like, it feels like you're jumping through a lot of hoops just to get a single mana gem. And I feel like the other mana gem cards that are in the game already, like Cataclysm and stuff like that, are just generally better. Not really sure what to think of Hunting Boar. I'm not a fan, Next up, we have the Harbinger of the Thralls, a 2 mana 2/2 that plays summon a Frozen Thrall or advance all your Frozen Thralls 1 round. Perfect card. This is exactly what the Turbo Thrall archetype needed. More early ways to get Thralls onto the board, like on turns 1 through 3. Currently, the only way to do it right now is to get it either obviously on turn 1 just by playing it from your hand normally, or playing a Lysandra on turn 3, which gives you still a pretty substantial amount of delay. Now, what I do love about this card specifically, though, is that not only can you summon it and just get a Frozen Thrall, but if you already have a board for a Frozen Thralls, it just becomes a Promised Futures, or not Promised Futures, the one that lowers all your landmarks by 1 countdown. So this card's actually pretty versatile, and it's just pretty good in general. And I think most importantly, too, it can also be used to make Lysandra leave Shurima a bit more. A lot of people don't really notice this, but the Thrall game plan is the Lysandra game plan is really going to be either 1, focus on Shurima and using advance to advance your Thralls to win the game, or alternatively, you play it more like a combo deck with Trundle and then play a bunch of Pillars of Ice and then kill them with the Watcher. Those are the only 2 real decks that there are in the game right now, and I think for this now, maybe you can start looking towards playing the Thrall game plan a bit more in other regions than just like, oh, if you don't want to play it in Shurima, you gotta go for combo, and that's the only way to play. So overall, pretty great card. I'm really happy to see it. Excited to see what other cards come out, maybe to support other archetypes like this. Next up, we have the Captive Greyback, the 4 mana 2/3 with attack. I deal 3 damage to my blocker. If it's dead or gone, I deal 3 damage to the enemy Nexus instead. Wow, what a powerful card. It's very reminiscent of like Talia's, how her ability is rewarded. And if you think about it, this is kind of like a 4 mana 5/3 with quick attack overwhelm. Yes, it's not as powerful as that inherently because obviously the attack damage is separated somewhat, but it's actually pretty good at sort of running over your opponent, especially if you compare this to other cards in the 4 mana slot for Noxus. I kind of feel like this card is actually going to be really, really powerful because you'll be able to do a lot of really strong things with it. For example, Decisive Maneuver alone is going to stun the blocker so the 3 damage goes to the face instead, and then you still get to overwhelm them with your overwhelm keyword. Another really big part of this card being good is that in Noxus 4 mana, I personally have had a lot of issues finding good cards that fill that spot up that aren't the Allegiance card. So this card could really fit into that slot really well, and I could really see a lot of really cool things working with it. I think perhaps the only downside of this card is that, of course, since its 5 damage is separated, it's not going to work for cards like Reputation, so that is a legitimate downside in Noxus. But overall, not a bad card. I'm really excited to play with it. All right, next up is Chamber of Renewal, the 3 mana landmark that whenever you when you summon a champion, destroy me to get +2/+1 and spell shield. So obviously there's some really, really powerful options here. Mono-Stream is obviously still a great deck in the game. You can play Chamber of Renewal into your Azereth to protect it from getting removed by anything, which makes it a insanely hard unit to sort of contest, especially with how its engine works. It also immediately destroys something that you'll also get a bunch of benefits from that as well. But I do think a card that wasn't mentioned as much during the reveal of this is obviously Renekton. With Renekton, this becomes a really, really easy way to both protect your Renekton as well as almost level it up instantly, especially off of any of its sort of various bonuses, right? Because if you give this plus say Relentless Predator, you're gonna get Ruthless Predator, you're gonna be able to immediately level up your Renekton super easily, all while being protected by Spell Shield with almost no way for the opponent to interact with you. That's some really, really scary stuff, and I think that's actually almost good enough to make Renekton a sizable threat again. Overall, really neat card, synergizes with almost everything that Shurima really wants, so yeah, great card design. Next up is Kinku's Call, the 4 mana slow speed spell. Summon a Keeper of Masks now, or at the next round start, and you draw 1. Okay, not bad. So obviously Keeper of Masks is roughly worth 2 mana, and playing it on a spell mana means you technically get a little bit more value out of it because you can ramp into this, right? You don't have to commit your unit mana. And even more interestingly, you can play this the turn before a huge open attack and protect yourself from a lot of board wipes, all while drawing 1. It's pretty decent. The biggest issues to me is that the scenarios where you're going to be trying to dodge a board wipe and things like that are going to be on trying to play this on a really big board that you have, right? So if the opponent sees you play Kinku's Call on the turn prior to you having a huge board, they're definitely going to wipe the board, and then your Keeper of Masks enter the board and then do nothing. So overall, it's not too bad. I wonder though, is there a way to make this card a bit better, or am I currently missing something? Overall, I think it has promise, and I think the design space is really cool. I love to choose one or the other archetypes, especially when they're not just stats. This one actually has a genuine difference. So overall, cool design. I'm not sure if it's good enough. It's close. It could be good in some like really shenanigans elusive decks, but overall I'd probably say probably not that great. All right, next up we have Legion Deserter, the 5 mana 5/4. I gain all allied everywhere buffs. So all those cards that are like Mistwraith that give +1 to all other Mistwraiths, Legion Deserter also gets it. The example they showed in the trailer was that Rumble's ability to grant Rumble ability keywords everywhere also works on Legion Deserter. Really cool concept. I like this a lot. But here's something interesting. The Encroaching Mist cards, the ones that are the Viego cards, they give all other Encroaching Mists everywhere +1/+1. But they also give all Viegos everywhere +1/+1. Which means that if you play 2, Legion Deserter is going to be a 9/8 5 mana Overwhelm card for something that is, I think we can all agree, fairly trivial to do. Like, think of how big you see Viego get sometimes. Legion Deserter is going to have double that and Overwhelm built in. And possibly more, depending on what other everywhere buffs you find. This card is pretty crazy. I think this card could be really insane, and we're just talking about one type of case here. This is one of the most, like, broadly crazy cards that I could see work in a variety of archetypes. Obviously, the Legion Commander ones are already there, but, like, sorry, the Legion Marauder cards are already there, but this is, like, really spicy. Like, you can just kill someone instantly with this. I think it's gonna be really crazy. We'll have to see if it's a meme or if it's real once the card's released. We'll have to test it and see, is Noxus Viego good enough? I am down to see it though. Next up is the Minotaur Lord Broadmane. Play, deal 2 to an enemy. Your fast spells, slow spells, and skills have, when I deal damage to a stunned or damaged enemy, kill it instead. Basically turning all of your spells into like Scorched Earths, which is really good, especially for a 6 mana 2/4. Like, you're gonna just be able to sort of blow up people with any sort of thing. Make it rain on damaged units, you're just casting Flocks now, you know what I mean? Like, card is actually pretty spicy. I think the number one that I pointed out on Twitter was that if you use this with Mega Inferno Bomb, the Zig spell, they all die. The opponent's entire board dies, and it curves into each other. You can play 6 mana Lord Broadmane, and then right after that, you can then play Mega Inferno Bomb on turn 7, and then just absolutely blow up the opponent's board. Absolutely hilarious stuff. It's probably too fragile for that to really work, but for 6 mana and having 4 health, he's not like easy to kill. Like, they have to commit something to him. So it's interesting. I think really exciting cards that are over the 5 mana mark like this are really, really neat. And I really am excited to sort of play with this one. Next up, we have the Maker, a 3 mana 3/2 and Ionia that has play, recall a unit with less power than me. This is really interesting. So normally it is a 3 mana 3/2 that is going to be able to bounce like a turn 1 or turn 2 card. And in that respect, it's not too bad. You might be able to do some cool shenanigans with it, with like Frostbite, for example. But generally, you're investing quite a bit into that just to get a 3 mana 3/2 on the board. So, you know, it's not really that worth it. What really I think is the intent for this card is to be using hand buffs on it. So cards like the Inspiring Mentor and stuff like that, which will allow you to get this strong enough to start recalling cards that are quite a bit more substantial. And I think in that respect, it becomes a lot more interesting. The issue is that I'm not sure if hand buff just wants to keep stalling out cards like this, especially from a tempo standpoint. I don't have a lot of faith in the hand buff archetype. I think it needs something really splashy and something really powerful, kind of like how the self-recall archetype got Ari and Kennen. I think we need to have something more close to a like champion champion who comes out who's more based around hand buffs to make this sort of good. She also has a lot of hands too, so you know, they're just telling you right there, player and hand buff, right? Overall though, not a huge fan of the card, unfortunately. It's not bad, just unfortunately, I don't see myself ever playing it, and I don't see it making too much of a splash. That could be me missing something, though. Maybe I am missing something. Next up, we have the goofiest looking sea monster I've ever seen, the 4 mana 3/4 Megatusk. Once you're deep, heal your allies and your Nexus by 3. So first of all, really cool. First of all, this is already giving you the ability to start healing yourself a bit more proactively within Bilgewater, which is something that's not really known for doing. But in particular, one big weakness of Deep is that when you eventually do hit your Deep cards, and you do hit the 15 cards left in your deck to activate your keyword, you are at such a low health from having to play a really defensive early game that even if you get your Nautilus down, you're starting to attack, the opponent's just going to start casting Decimates or other like spells at your Nexus and eventually just kill you. So Megatusk hopes to sort of alleviate that by giving you the ability to heal yourself a little bit, even just by 3, because if you play or draw multiples of him, or they're already on the board and you happen to go deep, you're going to get a lot of healing really quickly in a burst. Like just getting 2 of these, 1 in your hand, 1 on the board, generally something like that, it could really severely like set back an aggro deck from actually winning the game, right? The healing allies is not as important. I could see it being somewhat relevant if the opponent is playing like a lot of like if your card is damage the damage cards and stuff like that. But realistically, I just don't see that being the case. I do think that healing your Nexus against aggro is something that Deep desperately wanted to have, because a lot of its only healing was coming from cards like Vile Feast and other cards similar to it. And of course, one thing people always referenced was that Maokai's Sap Magic should have been allowed to heal your Nexus, and so they're allowing the deck to actually have something similar to that, and I'm really excited to see it. It of course pays for it in its raw stats, but I think it's definitely worth it, at least maybe 1 or 2 of in your deck. Alright, next up is the Protective Broodfather, the 8 mana 7/7, attack, draw a unit. If it's a dragon, summon it attacking. Man, as someone who is known for attacking and looking at the top card of my deck, this is not too bad. It's pretty crazy that you can now like attack with this on turn 8 and then suddenly swing out and get a huge A-Soul, right? Like that's pretty massive. Or even just doing cards that typically aren't seeing a lot of play, like Vox, like they showed in the trailer. There's a lot of really great cards that you could hypothetically pull out. The only question here is you're going to have a high amount of density of dragons to really make this card work well. And while it is possible for sure, I'm not sure what type of deck can really get there just yet. Especially on turn 8, maybe turn 7 if you're using like things like the Herald of Dragons. it's not bad, but it definitely is hard for you to see it being especially good, especially it coming down so late and it having to attack to activate. Overall, not a bad card. It's a really interesting idea for the dragons, but definitely something I'm not really super excited to see. All right, next up is Revna, the Lord Keeper. When I'm summoned, grant units in your deck my stats, then draw a unit with 5+ power. So obviously, generally, you're gonna want to be playing a bunch of units that increase your deck power so that when you draw Revna, you can then play her and she's gonna give a lot more stats. Because obviously, 6 mana to give +2/+2 across your deck isn't really good when you compare it to things like Hearthguard, which is a 5 mana 5/5 that does +1/+1 to your entire deck, right? So you need to sort of build around it. It's not just a splash card. And in that respect, I am not so certain on it. It's an interesting card, to say the least. I like how it immediately replaces itself. That's already really good. I think this is going to be a really solid mid-range card that's sort of like seeking to grind out the opponent with a massive amount of stats. The very fact that it draws a card to replace itself can really help, especially when you're trying to draw into your higher stat of unit buffs. That is something that is one of the weaknesses of the deck buff archetype, is that it's difficult to get a lot of those units out of your deck that are now stronger into your hand. And I think this is one of the ways that sort of fulfills it as well as enables the next part of it, right? So I think Revna's really cool like that. Overall though, it's hard to say because the deck buff archetype is already not very good, and it's hard to see that a 6 mana 2/2 would really accomplish much, even if it is sort of leapfrogging the stats further on. It's a cool idea. I would just have to test it and see if it's able to survive long enough on the board state in order to even make use of those additional stats. All right, next up is Stuttering Song Spinner. Burst speed, pick one of 2 new 2-cost cards to create in hand and set its cost to 0 this round. Repeat it 2 more times. So this is really interesting. You can do a lot of really cool, unique combos with this. Obviously, the 2-cost archetype is something that exists a lot in PNZ already, but since it sets them to 0, it won't synergize with those 2-cost cards directly, but instead more of the create a card and just lots of spell spam that PNZ is known for. PNZ does have quite an amount of really good 2-cost spells, and being able to choose between 2 each time will help you sort of like quality control it despite you spending 7 mana on this card. So overall, I think it's a pretty neat card. There are some rumors that people are saying this is kind of like a metaphor for some of Seraphine's backstory. And I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but hey, who knows? It is a music card suddenly showing up in PNZ right around the set I'd say that said that Seraphine might show up in the next year or so. So we'll see what happens, but overall, card seems pretty interesting. I think it's a pretty cool card. All right, next up is the Stagehand, the 2 mana 4/4, play, stun an enemy, and it has Ephemeral. Wow, this card is crazy. So obviously there's some obvious examples right off the bat to cards like Arachnoid Sentry, which are going to be able to come down and stun 1 unit and get you a lot of tempo by basically having a body and disabling one of their bodies at the same time. So on the defensive, this is already pretty good because it's going to act very much like a Arachnoid Sentry in Ionia, and that's honestly pretty good because who's going to want to attack into a 4/4 because you'll be able to trade with almost anything in the early game, all while stopping their biggest attackers from attacking into you as well. But remember, even on the offense, this card can get very spooky very quickly because you can play like Stagehand in an Ari deck, for example, and completely stun out some of the opponent's best blockers against you and give yourself a lot of maneuverability in that game state, as well as, remember, you can keep recalling it before it actually strikes with its Ephemeral, which means you can keep getting more and more stuns. And like, let's say you attack with it, stun something, get your Ari in, get some damage, it bounces it back to your hand. Next turn, they try to threaten you with like a big challenger. Boom, you can play Stagehand, block, stun their unit, and prevent them from attacking into you. Yes, you lose some card advantage, but you're going to gain a lot more tempo, and I think that's why this card is so powerful. 2 mana 4/4 is honestly pretty spooky, and it works with ephemeral cards too that are also in Ionia, and I think that's a deck that's like very fringe right now. It's not great, but you could do something with it now with especially powerful cards, especially in the early game, like cards like these. Really, really cool stuff here. Next up, we have Storm of Blades. For the rest of the game, when you Blade Dance, summon another attacking blade, and of course, Blade Dance 1 is already attached to it. So immediately when you play this, you are going to Blade Dance 2, technically, because it's going to immediately attack with another blade. Now that is very powerful. First of all, there's been a lot of issues with Ionia not being self-sufficient with its blade dancing. So for example, if you're trying to actually do anything with the blade dance archetype, you're kind of forced to go to Azir. Aurelia really doesn't work well on her own, as much as people have tried to do things like MF, for example, right? So overall, I definitely see how this is going to be a really big step towards fixing that, but even then, I still think you're going to be really loving this with Azir. More blades entering the board means you're going to be leveling Azir faster as well. In general, having a super wide board is really good because every single unit that enters inherently gets more damage because of Azir's level 2 ability. In general, Storm of Blades is just really, really good, and I really like how if you draw multiples, not only does it get better per cast you do, but each one already and also has an immediate Blade Dance as well. So you're not spending 5 mana to do nothing that turn, you're spending 5 mana to do a less efficient Blade Dance. Overall, great card. We'll see if it's able to bring back Azir Aurelia in a larger fashion, but I'm not too sure about it just yet. Next up, he's finally here, the Winding Light, the last version of the Aphelios gun creatures. This is the 7 mana 6/5 with Overwhelm. Nightfall, give other allies +2/+1 and Overwhelm this round. So in fact, it actually casts the gun form of itself across your entire board, and that is just crazy. This card is nuts, and I know it might not seem crazy, but you look at cards that are going to sort of work with this. The Nightfall package has been looking for a solid finisher like this, especially for your super high attack power Dianas. But remember, there's some other really cool things you can do with this too. You can use Unto Dusk to play this earlier on the game, and then use the Unto Dusk to completely surprise the opponent, and oh, suddenly we're all overwhelmed, sorry, GG, you know? Like, you can also do really cool things, like for example, Dusk Petal Dust, the 1 mana card that lets you sort of cheat your spell mana into units. You can get this on turn 6, and playing this on turn 6 and getting a huge stat buff across the board with a 6/5 body on top of it, that's pretty good. Like, you're gonna kill someone for sure with this. I'm really, really excited for this card. It's something that I think the sort of archetype sort of needed to sort of push it over the edge, and I'm really glad that Nightfall is getting some love here, because this is honestly really awesome. Really great card design. Really excited to sort of play with it, especially as someone who's played a lot of Nocturne in the past. Great card design. Let's go. All right, and lastly, we're finally here for Jhin. So 4 mana 4/4, of course, what else would it be? Origin, the Virtuoso, and attack, deal 2 to all stunned enemies. You've leveled up by playing 12 fast spells, slow spells, or skills. Cool. And then the Virtuoso is if a Jhin has started in your deck, for every 3 fast spells, slow spells, or skills you play while you behold him, play a Lotus Trap. And Lotus Trap does 1 damage to the enemy nexus, and if Jhin is in play, it then also stuns the weakest enemy. You may also put any follower that has a skill into your deck during deck building. This is his unique benefit for having Jhin in your deck. And of course, he then levels up into Jhin, the 4 mana 4/4, again, not gaining stats because that would ruin the meme, of course. And then he gains quick attack and has attack, deal 4 to all stunned enemies and the enemy nexus, essentially making him an insanely powerful card that's able to just blow up the opponent with constant decimates as he keeps on attacking. And of course, this will be really easy to get those stuns as you keep playing more of your skills and your fast and slow speed spells. There is a lot of really powerful stuff you can do with this Jhin, and I am really, really excited to see where people go with him. Inherently, as a Runeterran, he's going to be really hard to evaluate, and I'm not going to say whether or not he's going to be good or bad right now, because honestly, it's really difficult to say for sure. But I think some really obvious places you can go with this are just straight up going to Ionia to grab Yasuo. That seems really simple. There's some really other great options by going to Noxus to get Swain. Swain is going to love his non-combat damage, as well as constantly stunning things to get his attacks in more easily. There's going to be a lot of really good possibilities with sort of the pinging abilities of Bandle City, of course, as well, as you're able to get more damage in, and they also have access to some stuns. There's honestly a lot of different ways you can take this card, and I'm really interested. The one thing I'm sort of thinking of, though, is that the Lotus Traps specifically don't mention, I believe, being out of combat or not. So hypothetically, what you could do is you could have a bunch of Noxus cards that all attack together, and then they can then put more and more of the Lotus Traps on the stack, and then you can stun enemies so you get a bunch of overwhelm attacks and damage in. That's a really pretty decent way to go, as well as a consistent way to build higher damage, because just by having Jhin in your hand, your spells are going to start doing more damage, right? It acts almost as if that every 4th spell you're casting is getting a +1 for free, and that's pretty good, especially when you're playing decks that have a lot of skills or just have a lot of burn, right? You're going to be able to just blow up the opponent eventually because you're just getting like an additional 2 or 3 damage across a game, and that's pretty substantial. Like, that's a very real amount of damage that you can get. We'll just have to see, though, if the trade-off of not being able to have a second region is worth that additional bonus. And I think that's where they're going to really have to thread the needle in terms of balancing, because Jhin is going to have to be both good enough for you not to want to have another region, but also not so overpowered that he overtakes having a second region at all, right? And that difference there is difficult. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not sure I'd be able to do something like that. It's pretty challenging. So I'm really excited to see what they manage to do with it. I think the card is really cool, and it probably speaks to the fact that other Runeterrans that we're gonna get, that they mentioned that we're probably gonna get more of, will probably have something similar, where they're gonna have an ability at the start of the game which gives them some sort of benefit, and which leads you to these really much cooler champion designs that are a lot more hypothetically more in depth than ever before. So I'm really excited to see what the future of Runeterrans really holds, because Jhin seems like a pretty solid first attempt. We're just going to have to sort of see how crazy you can go with him, because right now he's just so broadly open that I can't even be like, oh yeah, he's going to be in this deck and he's going to win the game from there, right? No, I don't know. He's crazy right now. The card could just be anything. It could be completely useless. It could be the best card in the game. I literally cannot tell you right now. We're gonna have to see. It's a very interesting new concept, and it's gonna be something that's gonna take us a lot more to sort of get a handle on, I think. But overall, really cool card set, really cool. Well, everyone, that is it for me today. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I really appreciate you guys coming by. Feel free to stick around, subscribe, join my Discord, check me out on Twitter, that sort of stuff. You know, I hate to plug, but you know, I gotta do it. It's the YouTuber thing, you know. But anyways, thank you again so much for watching, everyone. I will see you all next time. Peace out.